Anthony Fauci sat before Congress and hid behind the Fifth Amendment, not once, not twice, but 111 times yesterday. But make no mistake, this isn't just about COVID-19, which the White House has revealed was a lab leak of what many, including the Secretary of HHS, has deemed a bioweapon. In fact, Fauci's playbook was written and used decades ago in another time. To understand how the world could be so brutally deceived, we also must look back at how it all began. Straight from the panic of the 1980s, the rollout of toxic single-option treatments like AZT, and a legacy built on protecting the institution at all costs. This will be the first of a two-part series looking at the man responsible for COVID, which took the lives of millions of trusting people worldwide that complied. Did you know that Fauci's wife was the head of the NIH, National Institute of Health, bioethics of all things? Until RFK Jr. got rid of her in April 2025. This is not the arrest of isolated people, guys. It's the destruction of a massive control structure that has embedded every part of our government. Now, if you're new here, I'm the ex-pharmacist, and this is where we pull back the curtain on the corporate-owned control structure. We examine the historical receipts they tried to bury, and we look past the official narratives. For years, we were told to blindly trust the guidance of an untouchable medical bureaucracy. But history repeats itself for those who don't pay attention. Today, we're connecting the dots between Fauci's absolute stonewalling on Capitol Hill yesterday and the foundational blueprint that he has used since the AIDS epidemic. I work very hard to bring clarity to some very complicated topics. So don't forget to give me a thumbs up, subscribe, ring the bell, and set it to all. And don't forget to share the video before the algorithm flags it, so many others may also awaken. Now let's examine the history that they never wanted you to question. First, I'll give you the high points of the 3-hour inquiry by the full committee hearing of the Senate Committee on Homeland Security and Governmental Affairs. But I want you to notice a particular shift in the narrative regarding Fauci and his auto-pen pardon the day before Joseph Biden left office. I won't go into the full pardon and how it was backdated to 2014, but what I will tell you is that around 2014 is when Fauci first started his research on COVID. So Senator Rand Paul is the one that chaired this hearing. And he stated that estimates are that there were 15 million deaths worldwide from COVID-19. He said that Fauci was aware of a mountain of evidence that the virus originated in the Wuhan lab, but he continued to deceive the people with the wet lab theory. Personally, I thought Paul went easy on him. He quoted a March 14th communication by Fauci stating that the task force recommendations were driven by me and that he had convinced Mayor Bill de Blasio to close the New York City schools and that the COVID lockdown would have never occurred without Fauci aiding and abetting the crime. Children lost years of education. Small businesses that were built over a long time were destroyed. Patients delayed cancer screenings and other medical care. Families were separated from their dying relatives. Workers were forced to take the jab or lose their job. Churches, employment, education, and travel were all halted in the name of science. Rand Paul said that Fauci funded the gain-of-function research in spite of warnings by his own peers. After receiving Fauci's first evocation, Senator Paul advised Fauci of Section 192 of Title II of the U.S. Code. Now, here's what the narrative is changing. Rand Paul made it clear that it's a crime for a witness under a subpoena to refuse to answer any question. So one of Fauci's 6 lawyers tried to disrupt the hearing to testify for Fauci after he pled the Fifth numerous times. And he thought his lawyer was going to talk for him. Well, he was told by the panel that he couldn't sit at the table, but he insisted, this is the lawyer, but he insisted on sitting there. And then he wouldn't shut up. So Senator Rand Paul had security remove Fauci's attorney from the hearing. The other gang of attorneys sat quiet through the rest of the hearing. Then Senator there were multiple ones. I'm not going to go through the Democratic pontificating of all of the senators on the other side of the aisle, let's say. The next senator that I'd like to look at during the hearing is Senator Rick Scott of Florida. He started out by talking about the indictment of Fauci's good friend and co-worker, David Morens, who was a former senior advisor at the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, also known as NIAID. Morens was indicted April 28th of this year for participating in a scheme to avoid FOIA requests and to conceal or falsify federal records connected to COVID-19 research grants. So it's starting to tumble, guys. Morens, who is 78 years old, has been charged with conspiracy against the United States and aiding and abetting. So that's some pretty big charges coming down. Allegations include efforts during the pandemic to hide records from public view, including using a personal Gmail account instead of an official NIH email to avoid FOIA release to communicate with Fauci's personal account as well. Scott also brought up Fauci's June 2024 testimony before Congress, where he perjured himself by testifying that Morens was not an advisor to him on institute policy. And then Scott proceeded to reveal additional communications to support the perjury allegations, as well as emails stating, "Destroy this email," which is clearly a cover-up of government information. Now I want to look at my favorite interchange, which was with Senator Josh Crowley, who opened his questioning by stating that nothing says honesty like taking the Fifth. And he's right. He then proceeded to ask Fauci what day of the week it was, what color tie he was wearing, and what color the carpet is, to which Fauci took the Fifth on each of those questions. Josh then told him that he knows darn well that he has no Fifth Amendment rights because he's been pardoned. Now, this is a big divergence from Trump saying that because it was signed by the auto pen, it's invalid. That doesn't mean that's not going to come back. What that means is right now, Fauci had given a pardon, he had no rights under the Fifth Amendment because of this pardon. Brown versus Walker of 1896, upheld by SCOTUS many times, said that when he has been pardoned, he may not stand upon his privilege. So this isn't about the Constitution either, guys. It's about contempt. And the Senate panel has already got a meeting scheduled next week to hold Fauci in contempt because he refused to answer under the Fifth privilege, which he doesn't have right now. Crowley clearly demonstrated the true Anthony Fauci, who got rich while millions of people were dying. Fauci is now worth $12 million after having gotten over $1 million in cash awards in just a year's time. In fact, Crowley revealed 8 different federal employees that Fauci used on his federal time and with federal resources to solicit personal cash prizes that would be paid directly to Fauci, which also violates the law because federal law prohibits the solicitation of cash awards or other personal benefits from federal employees. This is true at all levels of government, and I think we're going to see a lot of people violating this provision of the law. I know I was always very careful to not take anything from anybody for work that I did in my official capacity. So Josh also pointed out that Fauci is getting a pension, which paid him over $400,000 the first year. Crowley repeatedly stated that over 1 million Americans alone are dead, and Fauci got rich, and now he's taken the Fifth Amendment. Crowley didn't let up there. When Fauci pled the Fifth again, Josh told him that silence is admission, and while people were dying, Fauci was posing for the cover of InStyle magazine. He called Fauci a narcissist, a megalomaniac, and a liar, straight to his face. He then concluded by telling Fauci that he's done more to destroy science and people's faith in the medical system than anyone in his lifetime. And he's right. I'll link the complete Senate hearing in the description because you don't want to miss this one, guys. It was great. Okay, so next was Senator Bernie Moreno, who also did a bang-up job. He definitely deserves honorable mention for his part in this sham of a hearing. Moreno elaborates on Fauci's criminal lawyer who was ejected as having represented Senator Bob Menendez. Do you remember this guy who took gold bars and bribes from the Egyptians? He then held up an article in the Washington Free Beacon that states, if you are in deep, you know what lawyer to call. And it was talking about the lawyer that was just ejected from the room. Then Moreno asked the audience to stand up if they were called racist for calling COVID the Wuhan or China virus, or if they had the 6-foot rule and believed it was total crap, or thought that the vaccine wasn't something you should take, or thought that the way it was being handled was outrageous, or they were fired for not taking the vaccine. Or if they thought that closing schools was catastrophically stupid, and if they felt saying these things made them a lesser being in the eyes of others. Almost all of the audience stood up, and Senator Moreno asked Fauci to turn around and look at these people who were shamed for saying what we now know is the truth. Fauci wouldn't even look up. He refused to look back at these people, at the entire audience, saying to him, "You did this." Then Moreno continued to tear Fauci apart like a starving dog with a T-bone. It was absolutely great. Next, I'm going to go over Senator Joni Ernst. Each of these senators, you could tell, had a different topic that they were revealing that was related to the crimes of Anthony Fauci, the alleged crimes of Anthony Fauci. So, Senator Ernst followed the money, revealing in that 2022, Fauci was the highest paid employee in the federal government, making $480,000 a year, which was more than the NIH director and the president of the United States. She said that money was largely related to his work on biodefense. NIAID spent over $1 billion in biodefense and influenza federal contracts and subcontracts. She then detailed money from his agency to biolabs, who were conducting gain-of-function research in China, the Netherlands, and Wisconsin. Apparently, Deborah Birx has flipped on Fauci. In her book, she stated that she had a meeting at her home in March 2020 and that Fauci and Obama's CDC director were there. Dr. Birx said that they were trying to trap the president into having no other options and to block any of the president's escape routes so that he would have no option but to agree to our flatten the curve measures, which included all of the madness. Senator Ernst also detailed a $1 million transaction where taxpayer funds were sent to the Wuhan Institute and not reported to hide the fact that our own government NIAID was funding gain of function research, and that Fauci himself made a $9 million bribe in the form of an NIAID grant to induce a particular NIH virologist to say that the virus was likely from nature. So got it? Fauci gave a grant and buried it, $9 million, to pay an official, a government official, to say that it was not from the lab, it came from nature. And then Senator Ernst dropped a bombshell that Fauci shipped transgenic mice to China for coronavirus research. Now, if you don't know what this is, these were mice that had cells from 5-month-old aborted fetuses implanted on their head, and taxpayers paid for it. Chimeras are when you cross human cells with animal cells. It's some really sick stuff. These are these half-human beings that we've heard exist in cages their entire life in tunnels underground for these whack jobs to play with. She continued that Fauci's researchers, there's other ones that are flipping on him, have admitted to putting fetus livers, thymuses, and chunks of lung into the mice, jokingly calling them BLTL mice, and stating that they created a sandwich of aborted body parts on those mice. Lab employees in Montana also bought and used aborted baby body parts in their taxpayer-funded research for post-COVID work. The NIH funded putting aborted baby fingers and scalps and putting them into the backs of research mice. The scalps later grew fine baby hair on the mice. Tom Fitton also published documents that he got through a FOIA request that confirms that fetal organ sale in Pennsylvania was also done. And I'll link that into the description. So what we're watching, guys, goes really, really deep. And the next video, a subsequent one, will cover this monster that was created over 30 years ago. COVID wasn't Fauci's first rodeo, but it will be his last, I promise you. The next video will cover Fauci's handling of the AIDS crisis and how he heavily promoted fast-tracking AZT in the 80s, in spite of the fact that it was highly toxic and killed many patients, according to some experts, including Dr. Robert Wilmer, who accused Fauci of genocide back then. So this wasn't the first time that a drug was fast-tracked, knowing that it was dangerous, or at least without the predicate studies that are required to ensure safety of a drug. I just want to let you know, I'm still working on my personal emails with Dan Willis. The crystal content is really technical that he sent me, and I need to review and clarify much of what he told me because it's way over my head. So please be patient with me on that. Those who know me realize that I'm not one to just parrot what I hear. And I'm really careful about creating content that is as accurate and informative as possible. So there's a lot more coming on Dan and my conversations. I just need to get them I have to understand them myself. The emails of crystals, however, led me to a series of books that I read years ago known as The Ringing Cedars of Russia. And I will be doing some shorts about the illuminating compendium to assist in our understanding of the esoteric nature of reality. What I did is I haven't found my books yet, and if you try to buy these books, they're well over $100 for a little tiny paperback. And I mean a small paperback. But I did find on eBay an unofficial, I don't know if you can see it, an unofficial quotes from the Ringing Cedars books. And I'll be using this to create some shorts for your review and contemplation. So until next time, remember that love is the conduit that connects us to the unseen realm. So guys, be love if you want to evolve. I love you all, and I'm going now to make some turmeric ginger shots for inflammation for the Clean Living Lab, and I hope you'll join me over there. Until next time, be love.